when you discuss matters of import on broadcasting areas like radio, like television, we here, of course, at Talk Radio are not just a radio station, we're also a television station. We're out there live streaming right now on YouTube. We're also live streaming on Twitter. You sometimes get yourself into controversial situations. Piers Morgan is an old friend of mine. I used to work with him. He was my boss. He came in here last October, in fact, to do an interview around his new book, which was all about the woke-ists and how they were taking over Britain and taking over the world. And it was his battle against the woke-ists, which was going to be the future. Now, it turns out that as a result of the woke-ists, he has now been effectively cancelled. He hasn't really been cancelled because Piers Morgan cannot be cancelled. He basically quit the ITV Good Morning Britain show yesterday. I think in a lot of people's minds that will mean that Good Morning Britain will not be so much of a good morning anymore. It'll be pretty much of a bad morning Britain, because they won't be able to replace Piers Morgan. And as he's just said himself, they managed to beat BBC Breakfast in the ratings war for the first time ever yesterday. His words: "My work is done." Well, now he's going to go and do his work somewhere else. ITV probably, we think, were asking him to apologise for comments that he made about the mental state of Meghan Markle. He made those comments, in my view, because he thought that that was what was the case, and he wanted to communicate that to his listeners. Now, you may disagree with him. It may be that he was wrong to say that. I would not have said what he said, but then I'm not Piers Morgan. As I pointed out to him, he gets paid an awful lot more money than I do, unfortunately. But there we are. The point about the way that we are now constructing our conversations is this. I think we have to be extremely careful about what we regard as a no-go area for conversation, for debate and for discussion. Because if we start drawing lines around things and we start saying that you can't say this and you can't say that and you can't question this person and you can't question that person, then we start to get into some very dangerous territory. I would just say this: free speech is free speech. There are consequences to it. Of course there are. If you say something which you shouldn't say and libel someone, you can be sued. If you say something which invokes a criminal act, you can also be prosecuted. We already have laws in place for that. But I think if we have to start telling people that they can't talk about certain things, it starts to get incredibly difficult, and free speech is very much at risk. And I don't think that's a place where any of us want to go. This is Talk Radio. Brendan.
Hi, Mike.
How you doing?
I'm good, thanks.
Now, I presume, I'm hoping that you would agree with most of what I just said, because I think the conversation I just had with John Rentoul was one in which he basically said, look, you can't say certain things about certain people.
Yes, I think that is what's happening. And I think it's particularly true of Meghan Markle, or perhaps we should call her Saint Meghan, the patron saint of wokeness, who apparently cannot be questioned, cannot be blasphemed against, nothing bad can be said about her. I think what the Piers Morgan incident suggests is that Meghan Markle has been elevated to the status of this princess of wokeness, this untouchable character, this person who is so pure and wonderful and so truth-telling that anyone who criticizes her is essentially guilty of blasphemy and must be punished in some way. And the fact that someone can lose his job, he seems to have walked away because they demanded that he apologize. But the fact that someone can lose their job for criticizing a royal in the 21st century, that is really regressive and really worrying. It is really, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, the first sort of words uttered out of Oprah Winfrey's mouth were, "What is your truth?" Now, I'm already uncomfortable with that phrase, because your truth suggests to me that it's not the truth. It is a version of the truth that you wish people to believe. Absolutely. And what we got in the Harry and Meghan interview was unquestionably their version of the truth. And I really liked the Palace's statement yesterday, where they said they had that wonderful line, "Recollections may vary," which I thought was the politest way in history that anyone has ever accused someone else essentially of lying. It was charmingly, charmingly understated and British, wasn't it? Very understated and very accurate, I think. Yes, it was their truth. They were giving their version of events. It was incredibly self-obsessed and embarrassing and narcissistic. The thing I thought was most striking was their unwillingness to take responsibility for anything at all. They spent half of the time moaning about the fact that they didn't have security. At one point, I was screaming at my TV, "Get your own security. It's not complicated." So they wouldn't take responsibility for anything. They wanted to paint themselves as the victims of the firm. And so they had an agenda. They had a political point they wanted to make. And in those circumstances, it's entirely feasible that they said things that were either inaccurate or overblown or exaggerated. So Piers is right to be skeptical, I think, about some of the things they said.
Well, I've also been sceptical about some of the things that they said, but I did fall short of questioning her mental health, because I do know that is something that, as he later said yesterday, is not something that we should probably get into, because it's not for us to say. However, there's no question that what they did was a deliberate attempt to discredit the royal family, to discredit the individuals inside the royal family, and to do it for their own gain, basically.
Yes, I think it was, my view is that it was a pretty grotesque spectacle all around. These two privileged, wealthy people moaning to the billionaire Oprah Winfrey about how hard their lives are. And, Meghan Markle was wearing a dress that cost $4,500, which is twice the amount of the stimulus checks that desperate Americans are currently getting to help them survive during lockdown. So the whole thing was just so decadent and creepy, I thought.
Yes.
I think you're right. No one should go around saying, oh, you're not really mentally ill, you're making it up. That's a very unpleasant thing to say.
Yeah.
But I think that when Piers Morgan clarified his point, what he was trying to say is that he questions the veracity of their claims that they went to the palace and asked for help, and they said, I'm sorry, you can't get help because it looks bad. If someone in the palace were to get help for a psychological problem, that would look embarrassing. I agree with him that part of it seems incredibly unlikely. We know that royals in recent times have had therapy, have sought help. This is, and we know that the Cambridges and the Sussexes have been campaigning.
Harry, even Harry himself has spoken about how he's had some therapy and how that has helped him personally. So, it's not as if it's an unknown area for them, is it?
That's right. So that they have done this. They do this, and the idea that they went asking for assistance and they were told no, you can't do that seems to me very unlikely. But I think the broader point here is the point you made at the beginning is the question of freedom of speech and whether journalists and broadcasters are at liberty to call things into question, to raise questions, to cast doubt, or to be skeptical. That is a central part of a journalist's job. And I'm worried that the absence of Piers Morgan is, I think, a bad sign for the broadcast media, because surely we want it to be colourful and difficult and controversial. We don't want it to be a flat wasteland of samey opinions.
Well, no, the government will be delighted, I'm sure, because now they can put ministers on Good Morning Britain without fear or favour, knowing that they won't be embarrassed by being asked questions that they can't answer.
That's right. I think what this all demonstrates is that the people who benefit from censorship are the powerful, right? Yeah. Because Meghan Markle is a very, very influential, privileged person. She has a lot of cultural power. She has a lot of cultural influence. She's now been protected from criticism by what ITV has done. And of course, the other people who will benefit, as you say, are the political class and other powerful people who don't like being grilled by someone like Piers Morgan. So the more we sanitize the media, the more we tame the media, and the more we censor people who are apparently problematic, the more beneficial that will be for people in positions of power who will be protected from the kind of criticism and skepticism that they should be getting. So no one ever wins from censorship except powerful people, sometimes people with things to hide.
Yes, and that will change the influence, I guess, of the media and the role of the media. Newspapers are already much less influential than they used to be, simply because they're not read by as many people as they once were. There was a time when I certainly was working at Fleet Street. If you phoned up anyone from a national newspaper office, they would immediately sort of go into a sort of rigor mortis state and be absolutely terrified of what you're going to ask them. Nowadays, I think you can avoid calls from newspaper offices and you don't have to worry about it.
That's right. And the thing that worries me most about the media and the changes in the media in recent years is that it is becoming a bit flat. This is why somewhere like Talk Radio is so important, because you give expression to things that millions of people are thinking but are rarely expressed in the mainstream media. If you look at the BBC, it is so catastrophically out of touch with ordinary people. Or if you look at the way in which the backlash against the Society of Editors, because after the Harry and Meghan interview, in which they accused the British media of being bigoted and racist, the Society of Editors put out a pretty good comment saying, look, there's no proof that the British media is racist. Stop saying this. And now
it's a completely unfounded allegation, like many of the allegations. I mean, I passed a piece today from one of my listeners who said that they found an article from when Meghan Markle decided to marry Prince Harry, and it says that she's now going to get 6 months of royal lessons in order to teach her to be a duchess. This is the same woman who claims that she wasn't prepared for what she had to do.
Exactly right. You know, so much of this story doesn't stack up, and journalism's job is to question when there are holes in a story, especially a story being promoted by powerful, influential people. Journalists' job is to ask questions about that. That's what we're meant to do. Right. That's what Piers Morgan was doing. Now, maybe he stepped over a line in relation to the mental health question, but the culture of skepticism that he cultivated around Harry and Meghan and around the worship of Harry and Meghan, that was very useful. That's what a journalist is supposed to do. So there's a culture of conformism at the moment in the media and in society at large, because we all know that cancel culture mobs are lurking around the corner. And if you say the incorrect thing about gender, you could be thrown out of polite society. And if you blaspheme against Saint Meghan, you could lose your job. This is all having a very chilling effect on media debate and public debate. And I think more people are going to self-censor themselves as a result of this.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right, Brendan. Great to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Brendan O'Neill, editor of Spiked Online, on the Piers Morgan affair. Piers Morgan, of course, speaking this morning, says he will be back, Terminator style, and I'm sure that's true. How soon that happens, nobody knows. As soon as we do know, we will tell you. And we are trying, of course, to get Piers Morgan to talk to us right here on Talk Radio. As soon as we can get that done, we will bring him to you, because here we are, the home of free speech. We are the home of common sense, and we do say the things that nobody else wants to say because they're frightened. But nevertheless, we will always be fair, we will always be fearless, and we will always be kind. Well, maybe not always kind. This is Talk Radio.
Across the UK, online, on DAB, and on your smart speaker. Talk Radio.